An intellectual carrot. The mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 136. I'm Aaron Pollier.
And I'm Darlene.
We said that at the end of the last episode, we said that we were going to watch another science fiction movie from the 50s or 60s because we've been kind of watching, we watched The Mummy from 1930.
We've been in the 30s.
Yeah, we've been in the 30s for the past few movies. So we want to get back to our core.
And this one is from November 1961.
We had internet problems at the time, so I couldn't really look for a whole bunch of different movies, and I ended up having this one on
DVD,
on an actual physical DVD that we had not watched yet, and it's called Valley of the Dragons from 1961.
It's 82 minutes long.
Yeah.
And it's $125,000 budget.
And I don't know where that money went.
And it's loosely based on Jules Verne, and big letters of loosely based, on a comet. It used stock footage from 1 million BC.
Yeah.
King Dinosaur.
Yeah.
Catwoman of the Moon. And
we've seen Catwoman from the Moon and Rodan. And in the scene where Rodan appears, I joked that it was Rodan because I thought they had just a prop that somewhat looked like Rodan. And then I realized, no, actually, that is Rodan.
I had to tell him, that's Rodan.
Yeah, because you looked it up. I was just going with it. I was just going with the movie. I thought, no, there's no way. Wait a second, that really is Rodan.
I had to show him.
They even used the sound effects. They even use the Rodan sound effects. So this is connected to all the Japanese kaiju films, I guess, somehow, some way. Let's get into the problem with the movie first.
Yeah.
And let me talk about this.
Okay.
This movie has a lot of stock footage that involves animals fighting each other. It is very realistic to the point where some of the animals draw blood. Now, I don't think that there is any original footage of animals fighting in this movie.
No.
I think it's all stock footage, but it is upsetting to watch animals actually hurt each other. Okay? So if you have problems with any of that kind of stuff, which you shouldn't want to watch animals hurting each other for entertainment purposes. If you are, please stop. I don't know. This is kind of an upsetting film because there are animals that hurt each other. There are also animals that are clearly frightened in this film from fire being near them. And there are animals that have had carpet draped over them to make them look shaggy.
That is this film's actual filmage.
And I guarantee you those animals are miserable in this film, but we don't see them being beat or injured in other ways. Oh. I wanted to talk about that at first because I don't want to describe the things that happen in the film for people that are sensitive towards that. We've had films before that have this in it. Journey to the Center of the Earth was one of them, where there was a lizard that actually had like hot porridge poured over him, and the lizard looked very frightened and was clearly injured. There's no way he wouldn't have been injured by that event. There are animals that are clearly injured in this film.
Now, what they did film was the elephant in the shag carpet and the cows
with shag carpeting
and with fur or shag and weird horns put on them.
I think they just had their horns extended with fake horns to make them look bigger because they're not long horns because their horns curve in a weird way. Anyway, they filmed these segments out near Vasquez Rocks. They don't say that, like online. I didn't see where they said they filmed. It just said the United States. But if you've watched enough of these films, you know exactly where they're filming. It is Vasquez Rocks. It's during the day. These animals had to have been miserable in the heat of Vasquez Rocks out in the desert.
And
with shag carpeting on them.
The only other animal that we have in this thing is a prop of a large giant spider, which the other prop was pretty good. The actual web.
Yeah. The giant spider prop is awful.
The giant spider one was bad.
I wanted to just very quickly touch on the fact that, hey, this has animals harming each other for entertainment purposes, I guess, in it. That somebody, some sick bastard thought that this would be good in a movie, and I'm going to film it for entertainment purposes. If you can't handle that, don't watch this film. With all that being said, before we even get into the review, this film, even taking out that stuff, this film was arguably, and people might hate me for saying it, it's arguably more entertaining than The Mummy. It is not technically a better film. The Mummy is a stellar film with the production value, the acting in it, but The Mummy drags for so much of it, and it's generally dull. Whereas even if you take out all the animal crap that's in this movie, even the boring bits of this movie, you're engaged with because you're like, what the hell is going on?
But then it'd probably be, 45 minutes long?
If you took out all the animal cruelty in it, Darlene, yeah, I bet you about 40 minutes would be gone, which is shocking. I mean, a lot of it is
it's only 82 minutes.
A lot of the stuff that's in this movie that's animals is like animals running away from props on fire or falling down a ground that is cracking open, things like that. So, or like two animals just fighting each other for dominance, or
one eating another one.
Oh God, yeah, that's terrible. So, Darlene, have you seen this movie before?
No.
I'm gonna say right off, I have not seen it. I'm not going to recommend it.
Now, would you ever watch it again?
No.
That's what I was thinking.
Even though
I watch this again?
No, I wouldn't, because it's just kind of upsetting. Even though there's parts of it that are far more entertaining than The Mummy, because there really are some really entertaining parts in this.
The amount of confusion it gives me entertains you.
Yes, because you don't know what the hell's going on, even though you're watching the film and I'm telling you what's going on. You're like, what's going on? Where are they? Darlene, I've told you 4 times. They're on the moon.
They are not on the moon.
Fine, you can believe whatever you want to believe. They literally say that they're on the moon 2 times in the movie.
They didn't know where they were.
At first, and then they did. They literally see they're in orbit of Earth.
Okay, let's go to the...
Dear God, Darlene. It's not like it's obtuse where they are. They literally say where they are.
Okay, Aaron. I do not want to believe that they were on the moon.
They're on the moon. It's Jules Verne.
And let's just put it this way.
Sense.
They would not have been able to bring to the moon.
So, of course not. It's ridiculous. So, we have 4 main characters. Okay? None of the actors are really well known, I would say, outside of TV circles, except for Joan Staley, who plays a girl named Dina. Did you know her name was Dina? No. And it's because none of the characters really matter what their names are. They're archetypes. And the problem is that Dina, the women in this, they don't speak English because they're cave people, basically. This movie is not only...
from 2 different tribes.
This movie is not only awful to animals, it is incredibly sexist. Correct, Darlene? Yeah. Incredibly sexist. And it's a little weird that the only actress that I'm ever going to remember from this film is Joan Staley playing Dina, because she was a playmate. She was a playmate before this film.
Miss November 19 1958. Playboy Bunny.
Yeah. That's the only person from this film I'm going to
Aaron
ever
didn't
remember.
realize that until I
No,
told
I didn't.
him it.
I actually didn't because I'm not well versed in 1950s playmates. Let's be honest.
And then he looked it up.
I looked it up and I'm like, okay, no, she actually did a lot of cheesecake and pinup back in the 1950s. Okay, I'm fine with that. See, I grew up with pinup because of all the World War II stuff, right? And post-war stuff that came from my grandparents' generation and all that. So if people are interested, that's why I know a lot about pinup. You generally don't go to air shows that are filled with World War II warbirds and guys in flight jackets and not have some sort of education in pinup, both the artists and the models. So you end up absorbing that over decades of doing this. Regardless, Joan Staley, she did pinup, cheesecake, and then she did Playboy, her Playboy spread. She also did a lot of TV afterwards, but it seems like her career started with her Playboy spread, at least her acting career started with her Playboy spread and then went from there.
I don't think that a lot of these actors and actresses could just be movie.
At the time, no, yeah. You have a lot of TV.
You have a lot of TV and radio,
but it depends. It depends on where you're mostly at, and most of these people, these four leads, so to speak, are mostly TV, like 90% TV. So that it's kind of like going, oh, Barbara Eden. Everyone loves Barbara Eden from I Dream of Jeannie, but she's mostly TV, right? Like, I'm sure she was in movies. I'm not going to look her up at the moment, but I know she was in movies. Anyway.
This movie starts in a weird...
Yeah, it starts with, like, narration. It shows, like, the Earth rotating beneath the credits, and it's Jules Verne was 100 years ahead of his time, and talking about how he was, like, this great science fiction author, and yes, he was. I would say he's more science fantasy than science fiction, but like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea is pretty sci-fi. Journey to the Center of the Earth is obviously science fantasy,
but you have
fantasy adventure.
You have fantasy on in.
I have a lot of respect for Jules Verne.
Under 10,000 League, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, because there's the monsters the
monsters, but I mean. I think the Disney version really made it a little more sci-fi than it probably was originally. I haven't read the original 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea for a while. But anyway, this is taking place on May 16th, 1881 in Algeria. And outside the city, there are two men that have set themselves up for a duel. Now, the characters' names are Hector and Michael. One guy's French, Hector. One guy's Irish, Michael. They're fighting over a woman who is, we later learn, is basically a serial flirter that enjoys having men fight to the death over her. Correct?
Somebody need to turn her over their knee and paddle her,
or maybe like turn their guns on her because she's a literal menace to society. And it's clear that these guys know that she's been manipulating them, but like honor must be like maintained. And I don't know. It's the 19th century. They're assholes.
Anyway,
they choose dueling pistols, which are 100 years out of date. That are very clearly for.
Well, if this was 81. It's
1881.
Probably 1881. They're 70 years out of date.
Sure, whatever. These are the type of pistols that would be for like the Tan nobility, but
in Regency.
Yeah,
era.
But this is kind of. I mean, we have a guy that is a French colonel and then like a Irish commoner.
He doesn't. When he talks about things, he doesn't. He's supposed to come off as a commoner, but he's educated. He's educated, but there's no reason for these dueling pistols to be around. You'd think that like. And it's not like the French military has provided these pistols either. No, the doctor did. Yeah, the guy that's like overseeing the duel. Yeah. It doesn't really make a lot of sense with that. I don't know, for whatever reason that stuck with me. At this time, pistols. there's this. As they go turn around to shoot, this comet is coming in, and then the wind pulls up. And the doctor and the two seconds go flying off.
Yes, and Michael and Hector are like holding on to the ground, and somehow they don't get blown away.
And one of them actually has a small rock in their hand.
I think it's Michael. By the way, did you recognize the special effect of the comet coming in? I just thought about this.
It looked like a sparkler.
No. It looks like it came from outer space special effect.
Oh.
I just thought of that.
To me, looked like a sparkler.
Well, that's what it effectively was. Anyway, the two guys that held on for dear life and didn't get sucked away, they're actually knocked to the moon. Yeah, they don't know it at first because they're just transported to the moon. Everybody else that got blown away by this thing and got sucked into the air, I guess they're okay back on Earth.
I hope so, because the two duelists didn't care enough to have even a discussion about what happened to their...
Yes, they did. They one sentence. There was one sentence about them. I wonder what happened to them. I don't know. Let's move on. Like, it was that kind of stupidity.
It was enough that if I probably blew my nose and missed it.
And missed it, yeah. Oh man, where am I?
We're
here?
at Rodan appears in the sky.
No, we're not. You always jump ahead of scene. We're at the point where they end up talking and finding out. Well, they figure out that they need to work together, and they're going to postpone their duel for now. Now we see Rodan
appears in the sky. The stars are not correct,
yeah.
And there's no moon.
Hector cannot find Polaris and ends up seeing the Southern Cross, so they're still in the solar system. He thinks the disaster has made the Earth go into a different orbit. At this point, that's what he thinks. He thinks like the Earth has got tilted on its side because somehow they survived a ground zero impact from a comet large enough to dislodge the Earth from its orbit. They are geniuses. Now, mind you, there's no way that they would have been able to be moved to the moon and survived.
There's fairy dust in that.
Oh, no, there's LSD in this, Darlene. There's LSD. They decide to take turns on watch and keep a fire burning because they all have matches, of course, because they're 1881 gentlemen with means, I guess.
Maybe I'd never see it, but maybe somebody smokes a cigarette or
I'm fine with them lighting a fire like they did at first. They have their dueling pistols still, by the way, because they never let go of them for somehow. That night, an 8-man stalks into the camp, and both the idiots fire their guns. Both the idiots fire their guns into these 3 8-men, and then decide that their guns are totally useless and throw them away because they do not know how to make gunpowder or shot. This comes into play later. And this, I say that with like a knowing look at Darlene because they check off those guns hard in the beginning of the movie. And I'm like, those guns are going to come into play. And then this scene, they throw them away. And I'm like, what the hell? And then later on, they make gunpowder out of like the component parts at Vasquez Rocks. And I was like, oh my God, they're predating the Gorn, Arena TOS episode by making gunpowder. And they don't have their guns. Yeah, I know. So we then have a ton of animal violence, and I'm not going to describe it.
They took one of the spears from one of the 8-men, and the other hatchet. Oh, and those weren't 8 men from what Michael said.
No, Michael says that he's seen them before in the British Museum as Neanderthal men. No, they're not. We also have to say, at this point, there are times where we see cavemen. There are times that we see humans that live in caves. And I'm going to make a distinction here, Darlene, because the humans that live in caves are human actors that are just wearing, like, cavemen costumes. Okay?
They're wearing leather.
Yes. But then you have the actors that are wearing Morlock costumes. And I'm not saying that they kind of look like Morlocks. No, they're the Morlock costumes from Time Machine that have a skull on their face. And
they've got shiny eyes.
They have like a slightly different face, but those are the Morlock costumes from the Time Machine. They are. There's lots of animal violence. I'm not going to describe it. They end up running into a cave and are attacked by a giant spider. It has flashlight eyes. And it looks incredibly fake.
But the web was nice.
The web was nice, but it also had a fake skeleton in it. And afterwards, they defeat the spider, shake hands, decide that they are friends. They then see the moon in the sky, quote unquote, but it turns out that it is the Earth, and they point out land masses. And Darlene's like, that's not the Earth. And I'm like, it's literally the Earth. You can see England. You can see the Iberian Peninsula. There's North America. I can even see the Great Lakes. They did a pretty good job on the detail. And I'm like, anyway.
And they eat the spider.
They eat the spider. It's a giant undercooked spider meat. There are more animal violence scenes.
We go to the volcano that they see the volcano in the morning with a bunch of large mammoths. Those are the elephants with
shag carpeting stapled to them.
Large armadillos.
Actually, yeah, the scene with the giant armadillos, Darlene, are regular-sized armadillos and toy mammoths. You do know that, right? The only time that you see the mammoths that are full-sized are when they're by themselves. In those scenes, it's like a model shot of armadillos and all that.
But there's also that weird oxen, because one of them talks about Cap being able to hunt that.
Yeah. Oh, man.
And the oxens are cows
with shag carpeting
with
on them.
shag carpeting, weird horns.
So our two heroes, ladies and gentlemen, end up seeing some human-looking people and approach. They're attacked by thrown spears, but then all like the humans run away, and our heroes end up stealing this tribe's food, their clothes, their weapons, and their sandals.
And there's an iron pot that they take the food out of.
Like, these people are clearly like living hand to mouth as hunter-gatherers. These guys have perfectly serviceable clothes.
Yes. Well, there's cuts in them.
Sure.
But why would you change your clothes? I could see you putting the furs over top of it.
I mean, their boots were fine, right?
Their shoes should have been fine.
They just threw them out. They're like, screw it, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put on these like rough cut sandal type things. I don't know. They're all dicks. A mammoth comes out of nowhere and attacks our two heroes. Hector, the French guy Hector. He gets thrown into a river by this mammoth, and a blonde woman finds him. That is Joan Staley playing Dina. She wakes him up, takes him back to her village. The men try to kill him, but all the women try to have sexual intercourse with him because I guess he's different looking. But Dina, the blonde woman, fights them all off. And like we said already, this movie's really sexist. Women are possessions in this movie, correct?
Most of them, yes. Not Dina. She picks who she wants.
Dina puts herself as a possession of Hector.
Yes.
And what's weird is that every time Hector wants to get into Dina's pants, all the women from the village crowd around and like stare at them lustfully.
Okay, it's a scene where you have them two talking and there's nobody around them. Then they start kissing and come up for air and everyone is around.
Like children and women are surrounding them and just like looking at them.
And then when Hector takes Dina, picks, holds her, gets her to get up, you find the guys are actually watching too.
Like everyone just stops everything they're doing to stare at these two people like have sex.
And this is gross.
She's the only blonde woman in the tribe, by the way.
There's a blonde-haired guy in the other tribe.
He's a dirty blonde in the other tribe.
This is a black and white movie.
But you can tell. Should we? I'm just gonna skip around because.
Then we have the Irish guy, Michael, and his girl.
Yes. What is her name? Natita?
I don't know.
And she's jealous because at one point he saves Dina from being raped and now thinks that that Michael has chosen Dina as his woman, and she gets jealous and tries to like kill her.
You're skipping again.
I am skipping.
There's this whole point where he Michael, is it Michael? Michael saves them.
Mhm.
And Natina, or whatever her name, she wants to claim him, but there's another guy that is up against him.
Yes, and that's where Michael makes a sling and starts talking about David and Goliath, and then whips the hell out of this guy with a rock. And I'm like, this guy, yeah, he survives, but this guy's dead. Like with how he swung that rock, and it was a big rock, and how this guy flew backwards. This guy has broken ribs, internal bleeding,
But
and
he's
probably
in the next
ruptured
scene.
ruptured lungs and liver. Like, this guy's dead. Yeah, but he's fine. He's okay. He's not even bruised.
And what made Michael be able to be in this tribe is because he protected the elder.
Yes.
So go back around to your...
No, we're at that point because I'm skipping a whole bunch of animal violence scenes, Darlene. We end up... Man, there's the scene where it's Hector and Dina are swimming in the river.
Yeah, but it is actually the Pacific Ocean because it's
There's kelp.
There's kelp.
And I kept saying that the creature from the Black Lagoon needs to come up here. And I can guarantee you the only reason why these scenes were filmed.
There was a funny part of this. She takes off her top part of her caveman outfit, which is leathers, for under leathers.
She has a fur top.
It's hilarious that she took something off to still be in caveman garb. Take caveman garb off to be still in caveman garb to swim
Darlene,
with.
what is the entire reason why this was filmed?
That part was titillation.
Titillation because underboob.
Underboob.
That's the only reason, and it was obvious because it was like center frame, her swimming away from the camera, and
it went on for 3 to 4 minutes.
It was every time you looked at her, it was looking up her top. It was gratuitous. Like in Creature from the Black Lagoon, you have a woman that is in a beautiful bikini, correct? It is clearly for titillation, but it wasn't borderline obscene. It was...
The filming of this one was to look
up a woman's top. Yeah, in Creature, it was done artistically, even, you could say.
Then the next one is a volcano goes off.
The tribes are trapped in
a cave.
They have to kill a whole bunch of creatures by making gunpowder and throwing rocks down on top of them.
And the Hector teaches everybody to make gunpowder.
Yes, and they're like, "Oh, I wish we had our guns still. We could use them. Oops. Oh well. Let's move on." Lots of animals are freaking out. We see Rodan flying around again.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I'm still looking at my notes. Hector determines that they have 7 years now until the comet comes back. So now they have to survive for 7 more years before they can try to go back to Earth, and they can have sex with all the women of the different tribes. The end. Because all the women from the tribes are like looking at them like they're some sort of like Adonises, because they made rocks like Adonis, darling.
Adonis, yes, it is.
Because they threw rocks down on top of lizards with gunpowder. The end. Like, I know this sounds disjointed, folks, because it is. If you take out all the animal cruelty stuff, this is maybe 40 minutes, and what's left of that 40 minutes is sexist and misogynistic. Just generally misogynistic and like women are property. And here's the thing, Darlene, you will say this. Did you enjoy this movie?
I laughed at it.
Yeah, that's the thing. If you ignore the animal stuff, this movie is still baffling and insulting, but you can laugh at it because it is so dumb. I do not think that the filmmakers actually filmed any of the animal cruelty stuff. I think that was all stock footage.
I still think it's cruelty to put shag on a doggone elephant.
At Vasquez Rocks?
Vasquez Rocks.
Yeah, it is. Sure
Or
it
the
is.
cows.
So, folks, I'm going to say I don't recommend this because the movie is both insulting and upsetting.
And there's a lot that they could have done better.
A lot better. Is there anything that did work in this movie? Darlene, anything that you can think of that works? Seriously.
I guess the thing of you said that the picture of the of Earth from the moon.
No, it was still garbage. You could tell what it was. It was still garbage. There has to be at least one thing here that works. And because I try to be positive in these reviews.
The web was neat.
You know what? I thought the giant spider, as cheesy as it was actually kind of funny. I'll say that. I think it was kind of funny. I think it was a good reuse of the Morlock costumes. I'd rather see the Morlock costumes used than rotting away somewhere. Because obviously they were just thrown into some sort of prop department. Remember, the Time Machine prop from Time Machine was just thrown into a garage and it rotted. And somebody's restored it. But a lot of these props from these old movies were just not cared about. So if you see them reused and you loved them at one point, it's good to see them reused because it means somebody cared enough to put them into a props department. Unlike, George Pell in the War of the Worlds Martian saucers, which he just gave to the Boy Scouts to melt down for scrap. God, that's still. I know I've mentioned that like a dozen times in these reviews.
Yeah,
still galls me. It galls me. Just give the Boy Scouts money. You shouldn't have melted down those saucers because they were pure copper. That's oh my god. Anyway, they deserve to be in a museum. I'm going to yell at Indiana Jones all the time, yelling, it deserves to be in a museum. Anyway, I don't know if there's anything that truly works in this movie. I honestly don't think there's anything that truly works in this movie. It's not inspired. It's insulting.
Even the enemy-friend relationship between the guys. And I didn't get this whole thing of them at the end trying to make the tribes friends to each other and beating them in the chest.
I don't know.
Wouldn't you have done a handshake and taught that? Not punching somebody in the chest.
Giving him a heart attack. I don't know. And how does he suddenly know it's 7 years until this comet comes back when he said it was 100,000 years? Just a few minutes before, and the amount of time it takes to go around. God, I feel so disjointed talking about this movie because none of it really makes sense. It's upsetting. I laughed at parts of it and was honestly shocked at other parts where I did fast forward through parts of it because I was like, I just don't want to watch this. This is awful. And I hate being so negative because this is still not the worst film we've ever watched. This still does not beat those propaganda like Rocket Attack USA or, Invasion USA. Those are insulting movies. This is just very badly made, very badly conceived, upsetting. That's it. It's when you take out the animal cruelty, it's just a dumb, bad movie. But it's not offensive. But the animal cruelty stuff is kind of offensive in it. It is.
The way they treat the females is offensive.
It is. It's misogynistic and pretty awful. And obviously the whole scene, the only scene that was actually sort of artistic and interestingly shot was that swimming scene in the Pacific Ocean with the kelp and everything. But it was solely meant to look up her shirt. The way it was edited, the way it was shot, it was, I don't know.
Well, you've said this over and over again. Okay.
I know. I'm trying to force something positive out of my head for this because I hate being so negative. Darlene, tell me what a modern filmmaker can take away from this movie. Please tell me something.
Don't be cruel to animals?
Don't. No, of course not. Of course not. Don't rely on stock footage of like random 20-year-old movies that are all about animal cruelty and then put shag carpeting on Asian elephants in the middle of the desert. What the hell's wrong with you? I mean, okay, you hired a playmate because she had already been a playmate.
Was that the high expense of the movie? Because it's $125,000.
Was she the most charming person in this movie? Maybe. I don't want to say she was because I mean the guys.
Actually, I think the redhead was
more charming.
She could smile, and it lit up her face.
Yeah, maybe. The guys aren't bad actors. They just don't have a part. There's no real part. There's no meat in their roles. Right? I'm not going to blame that on the guys.
And the conversation that they have is not...
It doesn't do anything for them.
No.
I think they did the best with what they had, which was nothing. I can't blame this on the actors and actresses.
I gotta blame it on the director which is the same person, the director and the writer.
Who adapted it from Jules Verne. Do not blame Jules Verne for this. Do not blame Jules Verne.
Have you ever read off on a
No,
comic?
I never have, honestly. That seems like an oversight because I actually like Jules Verne. I don't know what else to say here, folks. We do not recommend it. Right? I mean, I'm not putting words in your mouth.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to watch this again.
I never want to see this movie again just because of the animal stuff. I want to... You're right. There's chunks of it that you can laugh at, but that's it. Like,
it's entertaining in that part that you laugh at its stupidness. But is that really?
Stupid. No, it's not worth it to go through it for the other thing. I mean, the only people I would ever recommend to watch this with is if you're interested in very early playmates and their acting careers, sure. But her part is so minor in this. That's it. That's all I can really say. I don't want to keep ragging on it. I'm just really trying my best to drag something positive out of it, and there's just not a lot here positive. I'm very sorry, folks. I don't know what we're going to watch next.
You say that a lot, too.
I know I say that a lot. I kind of want to watch another Mummy film, though, because the Mummy films after the first one are with totally different characters and a premise, so it might be more interesting. And I do think that these old Universal horror films are very important to the history of science fiction and fantasy. So we'll leave it there, right?
Yes, we should delete it.
So I'm Aaron.
I'm Darlene. Good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.